Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Rob Erdman. I'm the chair of the Technology Committee this year, and we are very excited that we have Chief Judge Morrissey and his law clerk, Lauren Kitzmiller, here. By way of background, Lauren graduated from the University of Maryland College Park and then followed up with a JD from University of Baltimore. She clerked for Judge Silkworth in Anne Arundel County and is now Chief Judge Morrissey's law clerk. And for Chief Judge Morrissey, he graduated from James Madison University, got his JD at UB, where he was the editor-in-chief of the Law Review. From there, he started his legal career at Venable. After that, he joined his three brothers at the firm Morrissey Brothers.
We deliver pizza, too, besides practicing law.
Did that for 14 years?
Yep, 14 years.
And in November of 2005, he was named District Court Judge in Prince George's County. And in June of 2014, he was named Chief Judge of the District Court of Maryland. And some perspective on that, as Chief Judge of the District Court, he oversees 34 courthouses, locations, more than 2,000 employees, and 116 state judges, and a court that processes more than 1.7 million cases in a year. Chief Judge Morrissey is a member and chairs multiple committees. Most importantly, why he's here tonight, he is the chair of the Maryland Electronic Courts Executive Steering Committee. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Chief Judge Morrissey.
Thank you very much.
Lauren. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Evening, I guess, now, right? Thank you. It's very impressive that so many people have decided to come out tonight to see this. So we'll get right into it. What I'm going to do is in the presentation, I'm going to try to show you why we went the way that we went. So our history, if you would, of getting to this point, where we are right now, and then I'm going to show you, Lauren's going to show you, what you're going to expect in the future coming up of the MDEC system, because we're going to show you the next generation of MDEC here tonight. It's based on programming called HTLM5, which is much more user-friendly. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have actually used the system already? Okay. This will be good for you all, because you'll see where it is right now and then what it's going to look like in a couple months from now when you go. Part of the reason we're moving for that is because there are designed upgrades in the system as we roll it out over time. This was known to us. It's going to happen every year or year and a half kind of thing. And you'll see these repeat itself over time, and each time it'll get a little better. This particular change will enable you to use any type of device to get onto the internet. There were some changes that occurred within Microsoft and within Google that we have no power to control over, and it involved technology called Silverlight that they're no longer using anymore. So it's kind of great that we were moving in that direction anyway. So can you go to the next slide, Lauren? Next. Okay, so where we came from and why we had a need to move to this electronic filing that you're having in the case management system that we had is because we had 11 different case management systems throughout the state of Maryland. Even within the district court, which is a unified state system, we had multiple systems. We had a criminal and a civil. Each circuit has its own system, and none of those systems talk to each other. To make matters more complicated, some of them in Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Prince George's, Montgomery, some of them are 25 to 30 years old. That's not to say that they're not good systems because they've been tinkered with for 25 to 30 years, but they're written in languages like BASIC and COBOL and Fortran that aren't supported by anyone anywhere in the United States anymore. And we were facing a crisis about 5 to 7 years ago where we knew looking forward that we had to do something to replace our systems. So we then went, if you can click around, so the forward. So we decided that I was part of a committee that reviewed what the technology was out there. This was in 2009, 2010 timeframe. And we were looking at the federal system and looking at who else the vendors were out in the United States that could support a program like that. Everybody here's probably used Pacer, right? Or most people have used Pacer before. I used Pacer when I was a practicing attorney. And Pacer's a very good system. But Pacer was built by the federal government with lots and lots and lots of money 25 years ago, and they don't share that technology with anyone, and it's custom to them. They developed it themselves. And that was one way that the Maryland judiciary could have gone in deciding to replace their case management system and to decide whether to permit e-filing or not, to develop your own system. California tried that. I don't know if you follow these things, but if you noticed, California tried to develop their own electronic case management system statewide, and they spent over $1 billion doing it, and it completely and utterly failed, and they're now coming to the vendor that we use. So we sent out an RFP like you do in all government contracts, right? A request for proposals, and we made all our specifications, and we bid it out, and there was a competitive bid process. In Tyler Technology, the winner, who's now the vendor, is clearly by far the nation's leader in delivering this product. They're in 36 states. They have 14 full states, and they serve about a third of the country's attorneys. All use this same system, the Odyssey system with the e-filing solution that we have. So we're not alone in this endeavor, and that comes with benefits to us, because if someone in Colorado wants an improvement and it's applicable to us here in Maryland, we will do that. And we run patches all the time. It happens that there are always going to be, when you convert legacy data over, there are always going to be issues with how that conversion goes. People here use Apple. Anybody use non-Apple? It's kind of the two worlds, aren't they? So if you use Apple, if you've noticed, they've upgraded their iOS software about 5 times in the last 6 or 7 weeks, because there were glitches when they introduced this upgrade of their software. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not, but my iPad, which I live and die by, was getting quirky for a couple days there, and I was starting to get frustrated. So you figure if Apple, the largest company in the world, right, is having problems in introducing software patches, we're going to have those too. But we're committed as the judiciary and with the vendor to upgrade it, and we're upgrading and upgrading and upgrading. The rollout, so I'm sure a lot of you are concerned about that for Baltimore County, is we rolled out in pieces. We started in Anne Arundel County with civil, domestic, and juvenile. And that was in August of last year, of 2014. About 4 months out, we got to a position where we felt stable, and then we decided to add criminal and traffic to that. And it's been a very interesting experience, because when we rolled out civil, on the civil side of things, the circuit court had a much more difficult time adapting to the civil world and the MDEC world than the district court did, which is just the opposite of what I thought would happen, actually. And it's because of the larger file sizes in the circuit court. And there were decisions that we made before we launched this product, for example, trying to back scan everything in. And it turned out to be, it's probably not the most efficient thing to try to, all the legacy files, to try to scan them in, because one, you don't use all of them, but even the active files, think about a big domestic case that's been going on for 10 years. You're really only using the top inch of that, right? You're not looking back to all those other things. And so the combination of then going to, all right, we can live with some files still have to be in the paper world until we can go completely, all the new cases are coming in electronic. That's great. That's easy. We never create a piece of paper on any of those. Why are we killing ourselves? Let's keep some of the paper files in here and electronify what we need to make that case in. And if we want to, at a later period of time, we can go back for historical reasons, and that's really the only reason to do it, and scan everything in. So when we got comfortable with the civil side of it, we went to launch the criminal and traffic side, and it was just the opposite experience. The circuit court didn't have as many issues with the criminal side of it, and the district court, because of the high volume courtrooms that we have, did have problems in processing. Never didn't process, it just took longer than what it had before. We have improvements on that we had anticipated we need to get used to it. It takes a while to get used to it. Some of those improvements didn't react the way that we wanted them to react. They are now. Speed's improving. The judge's ability to get used to the system. If you use Apple and you're shown an Android, you're going to have a tough time accepting the fact that the back button is on the left-hand side of the page rather than the right-hand side of the page. And I'm sure some of you that have used the current system on the file and serve part of it have seen that. It can be clunky in some stages, and I candidly admit that. I think that you'll see the improvements that are going to occur with this new HTLM5 version of it. It's much more user-friendly. It's more intuitive. The benefits are, and you can see the rest of the rollout schedule. So the Eastern Shore would be somewhere in the February winter time frame in the Upper Eastern Shore, sometime toward the end of the summer, kind of plus or minus a month or two in the Lower Eastern Shore. Then we're coming to Harford County is actually in between there in the early part of 2017, and then Baltimore County probably toward the end of 2017. We'll have the entire state done by 2019. It takes about 7 months once we decide that we're going to launch in your particular jurisdiction. That's how long it takes us to get the courts ready to accept your electronic filings. We're hopeful that as we proceed to the Lower Eastern Shore that we can start multiple rollouts at the same time by taking our teams and moving them around the state. So, couple things that you need to know to e-file on this. You need Internet Explorer 10 or 11. Not Windows 7 is fine. There's some people that got very concerned at the last one that I had. You told us we didn't. It's Internet Explorer 10 or 11, Chrome or Firefox. You need a high-speed internet connection. You need a screen resolution of 1024 760, and that's pretty standard these days. And then the scanner, the one kind of item that you probably may or may not have used before, although most printers now have a scan function in them, is a scanner. So everyone, when you register to e-file, you have to give a credit card. It's one of the things that you have to do. And it is PCI, which is the industry standard compliant, meaning they can't hack into your credit card. They're only charged on acceptance. So when you file, you will send in an electronic file, and Lauren will show you how it works. It's very much like filing an email with an attachment to it. So think of your email system as MDEC and the file and serve part of it, and then you're going to go outside to Word. You need to PDF it, and then you bring it over. And all the programs now can convert to PDF. Word can convert to PDF on 10 or 11. And then you submit it in, and then the clerk has to accept that filing. So you receive a notification when you send it in that we've got it, and that we're looking at it, and that will let you know when we accept it. Our processing times for that acceptance has been getting better. That was one of the learning experiences that we had to have, because the business process is different in the electronic world than it is in the paper world. When you used to file in the paper world, you would run down to the courthouse and you would stamp your paper in, and you'd have your file stamped copy, right, so that there couldn't be any statute of limitations questions. And you didn't really care what happened in the clerk's office, right? You just waited for your next scheduled trial date. You can now see the time that was lagging between when a clerk put it in, because it still really wasn't accepted. It was filed with the court, but it had not been accepted by the court, so the court still could have rejected it. There's a very limited number of reasons why you can reject the filing, but they still could have and did in the old days. They'd send you a written notice of deficiency in the mail, right? And you'd be like, oh, I got to get on this and get that thing filed down here immediately. Same thing happens in the electronic world, except you can see it, because you're going to electronically file it, and you're going to get a notification that says, we got it, and then you're going to wait, and hopefully within 4 to 5 days, you'll get a notice back that says it's been approved. That's when your credit card's charged. There is can you go back just to that for one more second? There is a 3.5% of the filing fee charge that's assessed by your credit card company. That doesn't come to the court. There has been questions asked to me, can you ask that as a matter of cost in court? And I'd say you can. I can't give you a definitive answer of what the judge is going to do, because each judge makes their own decision with respect to that. But it's got to work its way up through the court, and then you'll get a definitive opinion from either the Court of Special Appeals or the Court of Appeals on whether it is or isn't. But when I was a practicing attorney, I never hesitated to ask for costs. Let the judge decide, right? So there's a number of rules. The 20 series rules govern the MDEC filing process, and I'd encourage everyone to read them. There's nuances in those rules that can be very much beneficial to you. I know of some attorneys that were signing everything, you know, they were printing it out of their computer, signing it, and then scanning it back into their computer and then putting it to the MDEC world because they thought that they needed what we call a wet signature on it. And the rules don't require that. You can write your name S/S. You can also delegate authority. This was a big issue with people when we first started the system, that a clerk doesn't, you know, does a clerk have the right to file on your behalf or not? And the rules speak to that, and you can delegate authority. If you think about it in the paper world again, you're responsible for your clerk, right? And you'd give your clerk regularly the filing and say, go down to the courthouse and file this for me, right? It's the same thing in the electronic world. They have a user right. You can lend them your credentials to go in and actually file that because you're responsible for them ultimately as their supervisor. But I'd encourage everyone to go there. One of the big things that you need to take away from the rules is that the record is the electronic record. It's no longer the paper record. So that is what the court uses as its standard. So it doesn't matter what the paper says. It's once it's scanned in and been verified by the court that it's been accepted, that then is the official court record, and the paper document is no longer of any use. Okay? There are certain documents that you have to hang on to, and they're in the rules. There's things like deeds and passports and things like that. It's explained in the rules.
On the rules, the certification, are you guys going to get rid of that so that attorneys can just do what we do at the federal level, which is just certify they're complying with the redaction requirements? It seems like having another certification just seems to be very burdensome on attorneys.
You can't file, the rules require you to certify that.
Right, can we certify it? Can we change the system so that it's certified when you log in and you about to upload, as opposed to creating a separate certification that's required in the pleadings? Because I know stuff is getting bounced by a lot of attorneys because they're not putting it in.
Well, that shouldn't be happening, because what happens is when you go to file, there's a screen that pops up. There's only 4 things that it can really be rejected for. Lack of signature, used to be lack of payment, but we know that you have a credit card on file, so that's not an issue. That you did not file a certificate of service with the document, or that you did not file a certificate of redaction with the document. Before you file, there's a screen that pops up that says, check this box if you certify that you've got a certificate of service, check this box if you have a certificate of redaction. And if the answer is no, you know, if you check both boxes, then the filing goes through and you've done what you need to do to satisfy the rule. If the answer is, geez, I do have a redacted docket, you go back a page, and then you file under the rules a redacted version and a regular version, and then when that's accepted, but part of when the clerk's doing things, they accept it, they mark the redacted version as confidential, and the judge rules on it eventually at some point or another. Does that answer your question? Okay. You know, the rules are tricky things. I'd like to do away with the rules sometimes, but we have to follow the rules. It's what the judiciary does, right? And to the extent that I've needed to change the rules, the Court of Appeals, my boss's court, has been very understanding. In fact, there was early on, one of the things that I always worried about early on was that people wouldn't know that they had to mandatorily e-file in Anne Arundel County. What we found in the first 2 weeks was that someone from Baltimore City, because they were late on an appeal and weren't going to be able to drive it to court on time and knew they were going to blow the statute of limitations, tried to file an appeal from Baltimore City. I was like, no, we never even thought about that one, right? Somebody wanting to file when they're not authorized to file yet because you could only file in Anne Arundel County. Leave it to attorneys, right? There's always going to be somebody that's thinking around it. So to register online, that's governed by Rule 2104. You have to know your client protection fund number. I never knew still don't know my client protection fund number, but it's easy to find. It's at MD Courts, and that'll take you right into it. You can only register one time per attorney. I kind of just went through this. I went a little out of order. So these are the reasons for rejection: an unsigned document, a missing certificate of service, or a missing certificate of redaction. But it won't be rejected because you didn't put them on there, because you're certifying in the filing that you've done these things. Now, service can be e-service among attorneys if you both agree that's the way you want to do it. or it can be in paper if that's the way you want to do it. Someday in the future, it probably will be mandatory e-filing back and forth between the attorneys. But when we introduce any new program of this magnitude, we want to do it in steps. So there's design to this as to when we introduce new things, not to make it any more complicated than it already is. So go ahead and click. Click again. I just went over service copies. I've already gone over official record. And right now, the Tyler Technologies, the vendor, is the only vendor in the state offering e-filing services. But there are other vendors interested in doing that, and our contract with the vendor is such a way that we will permit anyone that reaches the certification level of the industry standard for e-filing, which I believe is 4.0. I could be wrong about that, but they have to comply with what industry standards are, and then they can offer e-filing. They usually do it for a fee, which is part of the problem. I've seen a number of these different. I go to these conferences where they show me these things. And some of them are really nice. Some of them add beneficial services to you, so they kind of act like your law firm's case management system if you want to go that way, but they charge a fee for doing that. Tyler will never charge a fee. It's included inside the filing fee that you file. We try to inform everyone. The portal is where you get your information, and Lauren will show you the portal when she pulls it up. It's where I'd encourage everyone to go if they want to see what information is happening right then in real time, whether we're going to have any planned outages, information on any other electronic filing service providers, and then she'll show you links. There's training sessions that you can link to very easily. Tyler has this thing called Tyler University, and they have thousands of different videos that you can access anytime that will help you in whatever training that you have or whatever issue that you have. Do you want to start now and just go into it? I'll turn it over to you. Is that good? Okay, so Lauren, you got a little of her bio before. She used to work for Judge Silkworth in Anne Arundel County. So as a law clerk, she was trained in the Odyssey system. She was there from the very first day of launch until I hired her away from Judge Silkworth. And she's been a godsend to me because she's an expert on the case management side, but she's also learned the e-filing side. So she's going to be able to show you that. We're going to concentrate tonight just on the e-filing side of it because I think that's what's most important to the Bar Association. How do you e-file on it? I can tell you one of the things that we will do before it's time for you guys to come out, or you can see it in some of the other counties like in the Upper Eastern Shore, we're going to offer a registration day if you want to. We're going to do it over there. We may do it in Annapolis too, but we're going to do it over there because obviously they need to register by the time we go live. And we'll help you register. We've done it a couple of times where we brought people here to register in a crowd like this, but most people usually aren't ready to register right then because either you don't want to commit your credit card, or it's probably better if you think it through with your law staff, with your staff as to how you kind of want to set it up. Do you want a court administrator to come in and set it up and then all emails go through that court administrator, or do you want the court administrator to just act as the court administrator or your office administrator, and then each attorney gets its own email? So there's a little bit of thought that goes into it. The actual registration process only takes a few minutes. So why don't I turn it over to Lauren, and I'm going to find a place to sit down.
So this is the main e-filing webpage. It should be in that yellow brochure, and if you did not get one, see me afterwards. I have 300 in my car, so I can get that to you. And on this page, you'll see e-file here. If you click that, it'll take you to the e-filing page where you log in, where you can register. You'll also see FAQs. Right here is our policy and procedures manual. This is pretty long, and it has everything you need to know about e-filing. But I'll also show you another link that is to a quick reference guide that's kind of condensed, and so it's easier to read. But if you really need all the instructions, everything, it's in this policy and procedures manual. There's also e-filing codes, which I'll get into once I go onto the system. Rules, overview. And from here, if you scroll down, there's links to webinars, and this is where the judge was saying to videos. If you click on this, it'll take you to, if it'll load, it'll take you to a page where you can register for webinars. Now, for those of you who have been using it, this is what it looks like now. The new version is going to look a little bit different. Same functionality, but it's a little bit cleaner. I think it's easier to use, but this is what you're seeing right now if you're using the system to e-file. But I'll show you on the actual e-filing page. I'm going to go into the stage site so I don't screw anything up in real life, but this is the site that you'll see once we convert over to the new system. It's, again, all the same functionality as the one we have right now. It just looks a little bit different. So in this court links and information, you'll see any important announcements, anything that the court's trying to tell you, it'll be in here. And if you scroll down, you'll see the sign-in page, and if you need to register, you can click there. And this right box is all the links that you need to the web training. And I think there's probably 4 or 5 different sessions up there right now for the next month or so. You can just click whatever time's convenient for you. That's actually a live session. It's with someone from Tyler. They'll go through the whole process. They'll go through registration. They'll go through all the different tabs. They'll go through how to file. They'll go through everything. So these are really good, and you can ask questions. It's interactive. It's not just a video, but there are videos as well on here. And another thing I wanted to, here's the quick reference guide. This is just a more condensed version of the policy and procedures manual that you can go to. The uniform subpoena, we have been mentioning this to people. If you use this statewide uniform subpoena, you can get it electronically on H5. Go ahead.
So one of the benefits, even though we're not rolled out statewide yet, because we have to convert data every place we go and we have to train everybody as we go, the system's internet-based, so it's available. And one of the things that we were looking at was the unified subpoena that was put into a rule 2 years ago. And we said, you know what, MDEC can handle this. So if you want to register, you don't necessarily have to file anything to register. You can register, get it up, and be ready for it whenever it comes. If you do that, you get a benefit right now today of being able to go anywhere in the state online and get a subpoena. So instead of having to either write to Wacomico County to get their subpoena or drive there and get it, or like I used to do every time I went to court, I'd pick up 10 or 12 subpoenas from whatever court I was at. You can just go online and get it now. And that's available today anywhere, as long as you're a registered user.
Right, so if you register, you'll have access to that too. So again, everything you need to know is in this self-help section. If not, it'll be on the actual File and Serve webpage, which is in that brochure. That'll also have contact information to people at JIS. It'll have contact information to people at Tyler if you need help. So they're available if you have questions at all. They can answer them. So I went ahead and logged in. This is what you're going to see. This is the new version that we have. It looks a little bit different than the older version. Less tabs across the top, a little bit cleaner. I'm not sure why it's so zoomed in on here, but you can see it up there. Once you log in, you'll always have this filer dashboard. If you go to Actions, you'll see all the different tabs. Now these in the older version are tabs across the screen. It's a little bit too confusing, I think, and I think this just makes it a little bit cleaner. But it's the same. It's very, very similar tabs in the new version. It's just condensed into this button. Dashboard is what we're looking at right now. You can click Start a New Case from here. You can file into an existing case. You can see your filing history. That'll just have all the filings that you've done in date order. Templates we'll talk a little bit about. And firm service contacts. Again, hopefully one day e-service will be the norm and people can serve each other through email, and that's how you set up people in your firm, how they're going to be on the service contact list. Reports, this is really nice. It automatically generates a report for you with your filings, and it takes all your credit card information, what you've been filing, and it's really easy and quick. I'm logged in as a firm administrator, and you'll see here firm users, firm attorneys, firm information, payment accounts. Only the firm administrator is going to see these buttons. The firm administrator is the person who is going to be basically running the account. That's the person that's going to be in charge of the credit card. That's the person that's going to be in charge of any new attorneys that are with the firm, updating any firm information. And the newer version is going to be a little bit different than the older version. The older version, you can go in and search for a firm, and you can join that firm if you're an attorney. And you'd be registering as a firm user. The new version is a little bit different. The firm administrator will register the firm just like in the older version, but in the new version, the firm administrator is going to send out an invitation link through email to any of your other attorneys in your firm. That way, we're kind of just having another security check, because at this point, people can kind of search for a firm, and if the hope is that people that are the firm administrators are keeping an eye on the firm to make sure that, who is registered with their firm is the correct people. But with this newer version, you can control who gets the invitation instead of just somebody searching.
And who gets kicked out if somebody leaves the firm.
Yes. Your paralegals can have a login. Your staff can have a login. You don't have to have a client protection fund number. They'll just register as an independent. You can send them the link, but they won't register with a client protection fund number. They'll just register as an independent user. But they can have same access as you. We're encouraging people to have more than one firm administrator, just in case one firm administrator leaves, then you'll have somebody else that can still get into your account. So I'm going to just show you how to file a new case. You probably won't remember this by the time 2017 rolls around, but at least you can see it is very user-friendly. I'm not a tech person, but it's not too difficult. After you do a few cases, it's really not too hard to navigate. So I'm going to click on Start a New Case. And the first box that's going to come up is case information. You'll choose which location you're filing into. We'll file into Glen Burnie District Court. You click the category. We'll choose civil, and the type of case. We're going to do contracts large claim. And then you can select the filing attorney here. I'm going to select myself, but you can, your staff can file on behalf of an attorney if you delegate that authority to them. They'll have it popped up here as all the attorneys that are in your firm. You'll have to click Save Changes to move to the next box, and you'll see up here it'll say Success. If you miss something, it'll have a red box, and it'll say that you're missing something, and then you can go back in and fix that. But anything with a red box around it, that's a required field, and you won't be able to move forward until you fill that out. So you'll see this, plaintiff and defendant. It's highlighted on plaintiff, so I'm going to be entering information for the plaintiff. You'll see the address is not in red. For time's sake, I won't fill out an address. I can move forward and save the changes. It automatically moves to defendant, so then you can fill out the defendant's information. And again, if you don't know the defendant's address for some reason, you don't need that since it's not outlined in red. You click Save Changes, and then it's going to move you into the filing details. This filing code, each courthouse has come up with its own filing codes. You need to pick whatever is closest to what you're trying to file. Here, I'm going to choose complaint. And then you need to describe what it is that you're filing. This reference number, it does not need to be used, but if you want to use some sort of filing system within your firm, it can be letters, it could be numbers, anything that you want to refer to in your firm, you can use this. It could be anything. You don't have to use it though. Filing comments is anything that you're going to be relaying to the clerk. You can say this is in conjunction with another case. You can say, please file this order with it. You know, any message that you want to relay to the clerk, you can put in filing comments. Courtesy copy can be any email address you want a courtesy copy sent to. Once the court accepts your filing, they'll send a date stamp copy to whoever you put in courtesy copies. Again, you don't have to do that, but if you want it sent to yourself, you want to send it to your paralegal, anyone.
To your client,
yeah.
you know, it can be. It doesn't have to be someone in another registered user inside the system.
Right, you can send it to anyone.
Is it going to email your client to put it in there, or is that just for acceptance?
It's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
I can see the concern on that.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So again, if you anyone you want to send a courtesy copy to, it's going to be sent once the court accepts it, and it's got that date stamp copy on it. It won't be sent before the court accepts it. So once you want to upload whatever you're filing, you will click this to select a document. Like Judge Morrissey said, it's going to have to be a PDF. Word I don't know if there is any computers now that don't have the capability to save a document that's a Word as a PDF, but it's going to have to be in PDF form. So once you click, it'll upload, and if you need to add another filing, I'm going to push Save. You come up here, you can see Add Another Filing. That can be, you can file exhibits, you can file another motion, you can file certificate of service, anything.
Let me talk for one.
Okay.
So one of the things that no computer system can do is substitute for the tabs that you would put in your exhibits, right? So you'd have your complaint, and then behind it, tab 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the exhibits. When we first started the system, we thought it would be best if in one PDF you put all of those, right? The complaint and the exhibits and the order. What we found is that from a practical standpoint for the judges, particularly on the circuit court, when you were to open that file, it could be 50 or 70 or 100 pages, and you don't know where the exhibits are in that. There's no way to electronically know that. So as a result, we've changed our business policy as to the way that we do it. And now you would have your complaint, and then you would file another, presumably they're going to be different exhibits anyway, or you can easily separate them out, make them separate exhibits, but then you'd have exhibit 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're all related, so when the judge sees the complaint, he sees the complaint on one line, and then underneath he or she will look and see exhibit 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It was particularly important in the foreclosure area, if anybody does foreclosures. Each court kind of has the way, each circuit court has believe there's 21 exhibits that are required or something like that. And they have the particular order that they want. And so we have kind of a business process that will show you how to put these in order. And once you get that business process down, it makes it so that it wouldn't be rejected for not having it in the order, but it causes a mess basically when it comes to court. And that's kind of true with a lot of things. The more information, like on filing description, that you want to put in, the easier it is for the judge, because you want to get your motion granted, right? I mean, when you just file motion in paper, judge kind of looks at it, and it's going to take him a minute or two, or her a minute or two, to figure out what the motion's about. Where if you put motion to win the case because the other side's a terrible person, the judge is going to say, all right, I know what you're asking me about. I'm going to go with this. It's the same thing in the computer world. There's one other thing that I didn't ask. Is anybody here from the state's attorneys or the public defender's office? Okay. If you see anybody of them, we give a separate training for them on it because they have kind of different roles that they play than regular attorneys. So I'm going to sit back down and let... It is an attachment.
And each exhibit would be add another filing?
That's correct.
Yeah. And it's the same process of...
Okay. If you don't mind, we're not too far from being done, and then I'll open it up for questions, and we'll go back to whatever we need to go.
Okay. So now it'll take you to the fees section. It auto-populates all of your fees based on what you're filing here. That was the cost of the motion that I was filing. Your credit card information will be entered, so you'll just click whatever credit card you want to use. For state agency, again, they have a waiver, so you can set that up if you're a state agency.
Or if you're filing on behalf of the, some project or something that's otherwise exempt from filing fees, there's the ability to file that waiver there.
And then just select the party responsible for the fees, and I'm going to select my client and then click Save Changes. These two check boxes are going to be you're going to have to click them before you move forward for any filing. The first checkbox is just certifying that the information doesn't contain any confidential information. If it does, that you have redacted it.
This is what I was talking about earlier, the two checkboxes.
The second is either asking the clerk for a writ of summons or saying that you have filed a certificate of service, or you've submitted service by traditional service.
I had mentioned before the 4 reasons, and I only got to 3 of them. The lack of a signature, the redaction, or the certification. The 4th is kind of unique to this new electronic world, and that is if you set up that you're filing John Doe against Susan Doe, but you go out into your computer and you pull over the wrong complaint and put it back in, right? I've always believed that as an attorney there was only one motion for summary judgment form ever created in mankind, and everybody's just cut and pasted, right? And so every once in a while you forget to take the caption and change the caption from another case. I mean, we've all done it. I've done it before. The rules allow the clerk to, if it's something that they can figure out, make the adjustments so they don't have to reject it. But where it comes to a point where the clerk is starting to make a judicial decision about which one is the right one, that's when it gets rejected. When it's rejected, a notification is sent back to you, and it says that you have 48 hours in which to rectify this problem. And if you do that within the 48 hours, it goes back. It reverts back to the time that you originally filed it, which is the date that you submitted it, not the date that the clerks approved it, okay? If you don't do anything to that, the file just sits there, and then you got to do something. You either got to request the judge to act on it, or it can just sit there, and ultimately it'll get either 2507 or 3507 dismissed, because they'll be in action for whatever the applicable time period is, either in the circuit or the district court. But I think, like most people, if you ever got a deficiency notice, I kind of drop what I'm doing and I fix whatever the deficiency was and get it refiled, and this gives you that same ability.
Right, and you'll get an email for accepted, for rejected, and I'll show you that. So once you have clicked these submission agreements, you can save this as a draft at any point. You don't have to get all the way to the bottom, but you can save this as a draft, and I'll show you there on the dashboard. There's a section for drafts if you want to go back and work on it later, or if you push continue, that's going to come up with an envelope number, and you just review. It'll have all of the information you have submitted, and you click submit, and then it's going to submit it to the court. I'll show you what an accepted looks like, what a rejected looks like. And I'll talk a little bit also about the templates while this is submitting. Once it submits, you'll have this green box. It'll say that your envelope's submitting. You can click here to review to view a receipt, and basically that's just what you had on the last page before you push submit. Templates, I won't go into that in too much detail, but basically you can create templates if you're working on a certain specific type of case multiple times. You can create a template, and basically it'll just auto-populate those fields for you, so you don't have to keep continually putting them in again and again. So you'll see that if I go to pending, it's going to show all the cases that are pending with the court. This is the envelope that I just submitted. This is the motion that I just submitted to the court. It'll say the envelope number, when it was submitted, time, who it was submitted by. You can view filing details. You can view service contacts. The service contacts, when you register, we're going to encourage you to go in and register yourself as a service contact. And that's easy. You just add yourself to the public list. If you have communicated with the other side and said, you know, I want to e-serve, and you can find, and they have to make themselves put on the public list as well. You can search for someone on the list, and if you can find them, then you can e-serve them. If I click this Maryland Judiciary, it always takes me back to the home filer dashboard. But so that's pending. An accepted filing is going to look like this. It'll have all of your accepted filings. You can go into actions. You can view filing details. If you go into filing, it'll show you a date stamp copy. And then you'll see it has a date and time stamp up there. So you can easily access that if you want to go back. A returned, which is in essence is rejected, they will, the court will explain to you why it was rejected. And on the clerk side of it, it looks a little bit similar to this with their review queue. But they can go in there, they can write notes, and they can choose different reasons why it was rejected. If I view filing details, I can see the reason why it was rejected. You'll see the red flag, rejection information, and this got rejected because it didn't have a signature, and it'll have the date and time. And then I'll show you, it should have a, yeah. This is what you'll get in an email when it's accepted, or this is I haven't gone in and gone to the clerk side and accepted it, but this is what I get when I submit a filing to the court, and it'll have all this information on here. One other thing on e-service, if you do e-serve, it'll show you, you know, who you're serving, and then it'll show you the date and time that the person opened that email, so you'll know that the attorney opened this email at 1:30 on Tuesday. It'll show up in your email to you when they opened it. And then other than that, drafts, again, what I was just saying, if you work on something and have to come back to it, it'll be in drafts. Served is also for e-service. And then file into an existing case. That's anything you want to file into something that's already been accepted by the court. And it's the same premise as what a new case is, you know, as far as filing goes. And then if you need help at all during this, if you click this link, it'll take you to information from Tyler, and they can help you. But if it's a Maryland-specific question, you're going to want to contact JIS, and the information for Tara, who is the project manager at JIS, is in the yellow brochure, and she is great. She knows what she's doing. She also has someone that's working with her now, Linda Malinowski, and they both are in the system every day. They know how to use it if you have questions. But does anybody have
It will take questions now. So, yes.
You talked about setting up an account and you have to have a credit card. What about pro se litigants?
Pro se litigants can register if they'd like to under the system. The only caveat with that is that once they register, they have to file electronically thereafter. But they're still allowed to file in paper. It's only the attorneys that are mandatory e-filing. We've only had a handful of self-represented litigants that wanted to try, but we're ready for them if they do. The one other component is a next generation of this. We're currently working on a bulk filing solution for the landlord-tenant bar. We've met with the landlords and their IT people to try to develop. You could actually use this system to do landlord-tenant filing right now. But if you have to do 300 or 400 of them at a time, it will take you a lot longer. And there's technology out there that allows you to upload and then transfer to the, it gets very wonky and technical, but it allows you to file into the Odyssey system. And we're working on the best approach to do that, whether we go through Tyler or some other vendor. But we're spending a lot of time figuring those things out.
Is that what a template's for?
The template can help for if you have, like say you're doing debt collection and you have the same client and you're going to file 10 of them, you can populate your client information, use the template so it kind of repeats over and over again. Yes?
We're finding difficulty in when we have citations. We
Yes.
have 10 citations.
Okay.
How do we do that? Because we have to enter for each citation.
Here's the problem, okay? And this is where Maryland's a little bit screwy in the way that we do things. But there's a reason why we do it the way that we do it. Each citation is its own case. And it has to be that way because people pay according to their ticket information. And so if it was all one case, suppose you had 10 tickets and the fines were anywhere from $50 on one, $500 on another, $20 on another, and it must appear on the fifth one. A lot of people come in and pay the non-jailable offense. And sometimes they pay $70. And if it's all one case, that ticket can't be closed out yet. This way, the way that we do it and why it's always its own individual case, if someone wants to pay 2 of the 3 citations, they can come in and do that. In the current one that you're using right now, it does require you. On this one, that's what the template allows you to do. You can file all 10 of them at one time.
Okay.
Okay, you can relate them. And that's another reason why we wanted to go to this. I'd like to launch it right now, but we need to time it in conjunction with the training that we're doing for the Upper Eastern Shore. In fact, I think Lauren mentioned, you can actually use this version if you want. We're not fully trained up in our own IT staff to support you on this, though. So whereas we'd probably have 10 people that could answer your questions on the current system, we might only have 1, and it might be difficult to get through to that person. So we just prefer that we launch it all at one time with the appropriate notice to everyone and have our own staff trained up on this system. Yes, sir.
With regard to filing a lawsuit, after you do all your electronic filing, would you get an electronic summons back to be served?
The electronic summons comes back, but you have to print it out and then print out the service copies.
Okay.
Okay.
And so if you're serving an individual, you would serve just like you would now, and then you'd have to file the affidavit.
Exactly. In process serving companies can be registered users. There's different roles that you can be as a registered user. And so they can then file electronically the certificate of service, but that's all they'd be able to do.
And let me, with regard to that also, and maybe you're not, this is confusing the two, but let's say, for instance, a plaintiff is suing governmental employees in federal court. In federal court, if the governmental attorney is willing to accept service for that employee, they get 60 days to respond rather than the traditional 25.
Right.
Do you have a similar program for that? Since I'm a government lawyer, that's one that interests me.
It does. It follows the rules, whether you're in state or whether you're an out-of-state or government employee, and there's one other one that I can't remember what the service rules are that are the longer.
SDAT service.
Yeah, SDAT service, exactly. And it does. It does it. We set, the clerk set to whatever it is required under the rules in terms of their calendaring.
But not based on whether, to his question, not based on whether you've agreed to accept it electronically, which would trigger a longer time in federal court.
There's no comparable statute in Maryland. Yes, sir.
What about litigation in the orphans court?
I don't believe that it applies to the orphans court. I can check that, though, but I've never dealt with anything orphans related, so I would be surprised if it isn't. The orphans court are kind of their own deal. They're part of the judiciary. It's kind of hard to explain. They're part of the judiciary, but they're kind of on their own in the sense that they're not part of the judiciary. Does that make sense? It's kind of like saying it's soft and firm, right? It's soft yet firm. or I don't know the answer to that one. I'll make sure that I verify that, but they're not, to my
Can
knowledge.
we work on getting orphans court subpoenas online?
If you send an email to me, I run it up. Again, I'm not the most technologically advanced person in the world. I'm not a real computer guy. We have people, sometimes I bring them with me, but I prefer them not being out here doing this. I prefer them making the system better back where we're at. But if you have any questions like that, feel free to contact me. But what I'm going to do with that is then I'm going to forward that to the Tyler or our GIS help desk, and we're going to create a ticket for it. And then every 2 weeks, as part of the committees that I sit on, I actually do it every week, we go over the outstanding tickets and identify, whether it's a technical problem that Tyler needs to fix, whether it's a problem that's created as a result of a network that may be a combination of the county attorney IT structure and our structure, whether it's a preference type of issue, where a judge doesn't like the way that it appears on his screen and wants you to change it, and whether it's going to take custom programming to do that. But we look at those, and then if it's something that we feel that needs to be changed and it's a major change, then there has to be a scope of work. Those take longer, but the technical ones don't take that long. Usually we get them fixed very, very quickly, and we patch at night when you're not using the system, so it's rare that the system's down. It just hasn't. We've not yet had I believe we only had one unscheduled downtime, and that was because someone clipped a network, an underground, it wasn't us, you know what I mean? Everybody was affected in Annapolis by it, and it just so happens that our IT department's in Annapolis. I think the guys that lived under the bridge in Spa Creek caught it on fire, I'm serious, and burnt the cable lines that run underneath the bridge. So those are the kind of calls that I get at 3 o'clock in the morning that I'm like, what did, Yes, ma'am.
What do the attorneys see if they're on the defendant side? Can they view case information for a case that they're representing a defendant in? Can they view that filing, the complaint that the plaintiff filed?
Yes, they can. The information is available to the attorney of record and the party of record. So the parties can go in and see this if they want, but they have to register. And you can make that, available to your clients if you'd like.
The dashboard.
Well, to review cases, just to see case filings.
That aren't yours.
You can't do that.
Well, if you register
can under case search.
if you register for secure case search, which is separate than this registration, you can see. I mean, you can look up a case number. I mean, it's just, but you can actually see the filings. It's not like public case search where it's, you can see the events and no filings. In secure case search, you can see the actual PDFs.
Okay.
So, and that brings up a good point. If I could just take one moment on that. So case search, which you all probably use, I would assume, it is not changing. It's still case search. So anybody, the public, can go on it, and it provides a limited amount of information. And there are groups of people that think the amount of information that the judiciary is allowing people to see remotely from their computers is a bad thing. And there's as many people that rely on that for either their business functions, or it's an important source for employers to look about individuals that they're hiring, or they like to find out what their neighbors have done last weekend. And we're trying to work through those issues as to what amount people have a right to remotely view. You'll always have the same access in the courthouse as you would with a paper file, and that's by rule and by statute. So kind of with the exception of juvenile matters, right? You're never going to be able to see a juvenile matter. If you come down to the courthouse, we have public terminals where you can come in and look to the same way you would look if you asked a clerk to retrieve a file from you if you were Joe Blow and not a party to the case. There were policy decisions made before I came on this that said, because of some of those same concerns, that they didn't think it was appropriate to have attorneys have remote access to the entire case. And that's what you get when you go on that portal. For all your cases, you can see the complaint, you can see everything, right? In regular case search, all you see is a summary of the case, basically. They didn't think it appropriate, like under the federal system, where you can do that for a fee, by the way, and I don't like the idea of fees on these things, but for a fee, the federal system allows you to use it just to search anything and to see documents remotely. We've made that decision. It was made a long time ago that this is the way we were going to start this, that the attorneys would only be able to see their own cases remotely, not everybody else's cases. That comes with issues, and we will revisit that. And if I get my way, it won't be that way, but I'm not the only one that makes the decision in the judiciary. So there's some very, very strong arguments for and against it, and it's a very difficult issue to balance. Historically, the judiciary has always been, and I was trained this way, and I believe it to my soul, to be as transparent as possible, to be as open and accessible as possible. It's a check by the public on how the government is doing it, and that anything that you file in the court is public record, so you're on notice, everybody's going to see it. But there's a lot of people being hurt by this information. There's people that, someone files take for an example in the criminal world, we allow citizens to file complaints in Maryland. A lot of states don't. They have to be screened by state's attorneys before you're allowed. That's not the way. It's the other way. In Maryland, they file it, and then they have to go see the state's attorney. But, suppose someone files a frivolous action, a criminal action, because they're mad, and they feel somehow that person did something wrong, and then the state's attorney ultimately decides to null process later on. That information is out there, and the person has to ask for it to be expunged, to be taken out of the system. But in the meantime, companies that collect data have gone through and grabbed this information and memorialized it in some warehouse of a computer center that they have in Omaha that picks up 5 billion bits of information every minute and stores it. And so it's never completely gone, even if it's expunged, because someone captured it at some point in time before it got expunged. And that's a real problem for people, and it's a very difficult issue. And quite frankly, we're struggling with it. With some of the brightest people I've ever met are struggling with where the balance is on that. And it's ultimately going to go in front of the Judicial Council, which is Chief Judge Barbera's governing unit, and her court will ultimately make the decision. It won't be that long, because I really feel that there's an urgency to make sure that we come out with a policy that says this is how we're going to treat this in the future. I hope, though, that for attorneys, I'm able to enable everyone to see every case, because I know I was a practicing attorney for 17 years. I know when a criminal defendant comes into my office and says I was arrested for a DWI, I say, let me see your tickets. They say, I don't know where they are. And I don't want to enter my appearance yet because they haven't paid me my fee, right? And so I'm not doing it. I'm not entering my. And now there's this Court of Appeals case that says, or Court of Special, I think, that said you got to have like unusual circumstances to get out of the case. I haven't read the case yet, but it was one of those, as an attorney, I would have read line for line on it. So that's where we are in terms of those. I know that was a very long answer, and I'm not even sure there's a question on that, but sorry. Sir?
Now, what provision, periodically, if we don't do it a lot, we have filed under seal?
Yes.
What can be done with this as far as filing under seal?
Confidential. You file it, mark it as confidential. The judge will make a decision on it as to whether it remains that way or not. Sir?
Is that what you would do for a post-judgment collection? So I was going to do a garnishment on a bank account, I didn't want the other side to see it. As I electronically filed it before we served, so they couldn't deplete the account, would that just be confidential? Or?
That's a really good question. Can you put that in writing to me, and I'll get you the answer back? I know someone that knows the answer. I just don't know the answer to it. Okay. Sir?
About the financial statements that are routinely filed with a complaint for divorce, the 9203s, is there a means of ensuring, I mean, that would normally be placed in an envelope in the courthouse records.
That's when you go back a screen where it would be the check confidential, and it would give you the ability to note that it's a confidential document. And then when it alerts the clerk when it comes into us that this needs to be driven to a judge. And part of the neat part about the system is that that can happen if the court gets their business processes correct. That can happen by a transfer seamlessly to the judge, and then the judge's clerk will have a queue when they come in, and it'll say, Judge, you need to act on these 5 cases, and the judge can go into their computer and do whatever they want to do with the case. Now, it's kind of the theory that we've gone on is that a judge can use the system as extensively as they want or not as extensively as they want. So a older judge that may be less technology comfortable can print out whatever they'd like out of the system, because it's print on demand, everything. And they can sign it and give it to their clerk and have them scan it back in, and then the clerk can do everything. We will move toward more judges doing things from the bench, but there's a real argument on the other side that says, you know, the judge's time may be more valuable than a clerk's time in terms of data input, and that the judge's job is to make the decisions, but the clerk's job is to input the data into the system. You know, ultimately in traffic, I'd like to see a touch screen as a judge that I can say guilty, not guilty. It'll populate the amount of the fines. We're not there yet. Those kind of little gadgets are expensive, and we will get there, though. I mean, it's, again, the federal government had almost 30 years now to have tampered with PACER. Give me 30 years and $1 billion, I'll do the same thing. I don't need $1 billion. It's not that expensive.
I just wanted to make one more point about the confidential. This site is a stage site, so it's not, anything I file in here is not actually being filed with the court. But when you are on the actual production site, when you're in the filing section, there'll be a little, there's the check mark at the bottom certifying that you've redacted, but in the actual filings, there will be a smaller checkbox that says confidential, and that's where you'll check if something's confidential. It didn't show up on mine because mine is a stage site, and I guess it doesn't have that functionality on there, but on the actual site, it'll have a little box you can push, this is how confidential, and that alerts the clerk that it's confidential.
So, okay, one more. You get to close that.
Emergency filings. Now we hand deliver a copy to the clerk. We take a copy to the chambers judge and wait to see what they want to do.
So Anne Arundel County has the both courts, district court has 2 court locations, but both district and circuit court have a business process for handling emergency filings. You need to just check with the clerk. You still have to file electronically, but it's, I don't know it exactly off the top of my head, but I know they worked it out, so it's very similar. It just goes to the judge electronically rather than in paper. So that's the one thing that, you know, that's where attorneys can get themselves in a jam, because they come down and try to file something in paper, and we won't accept it in paper. You got to scan it in, even if it's an emergency motion. But they've worked out a way to say, okay, he scanned it, I'm going to get it over to the judge immediately. It's going to be a #1 priority on the list, and the judge will act. There's usually, in my court, there was always a chambers judge that handled that was there all day. They might be doing other things at the time, but that was their job for the day. So I'd like to just conclude by thanking you guys for the bar. It's a pilot in Anne Arundel County, and we've called it a pilot because it's a massive undertaking that we're doing. It is a difficult proposition that we're undertaking, and we're making changes so that when we do come to Baltimore County, you won't have those issues. There'll always be a few issues when you first start because of the conversion issues, because every conversion is different, because Baltimore County was keeping data differently than Prince George's County was keeping it. In a clerk, I'll give you one example of an issue that we ran into, that converting over, there was 5 attorneys in Anne Arundel County that were high-volume criminal defense attorneys, and their address was all on the same address, and it was something, 5 numbers, and then Annapolis Baltimore Boulevard in Annapolis Junction, Maryland. That was in the computer for one attorney 2,600 different ways in Anne Arundel County. Annap-Balt, Annap-Balt, Annapolis misspelled Baltimore, you know, different zip codes, Annapolis junk, you know, and you can see where I'm going with that. And so what we don't want is the system to guess that this is the same person, because once it links that case to you, it's your case. So we literally had to, you know, the computer can kind of filter out for you and give you likely hits, but it takes human intervention on that. Now, we won't ever have to do that again for that guy, because we've done it. We spent the resources that we needed to get that person in. But that's an issue that you don't think about, you know, and that we really, I don't think anybody had seen that before. We even asked our vendor, like, has this happened some other place? And they said, no, not 20. You know, they've seen 50 different versions before, but not that. So I'd like the people that have used the system already, thank you very much for your patience and understanding. You can see we're already moving to the next generation. It will get better. Adam, did you see it? Do you think that's an improvement over the old system? I didn't pay him any money or anything. He came up to me beforehand. I think we fought each other viciously in a case in Prince George's County about 10 years ago before I was a judge. But do you think that's an improvement over the old system?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I was going to say, these emails that we send them, they listen. They have made some changes repeatedly that we've asked about. We've said, there's a problem here, we need this done. I don't know what committee works on it, but they are very responsive. I've been very impressed with the implementation.
Thank you very much.
It's been awesome.
With that said, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.